Maybe you've noticed it lately, or maybe it's been simmering for years. The inability to focus on anything for more than a few minutes, the sense that your brain is scattered into 1,000 pieces, the restlessness, the forgetfulness, the half-finished tasks, the sense of drowning in chaos. You look around at the laundry piling up, the tabs open on your laptop, the unread emails, the projects you abandoned after a burst of excitement wore off. You can't remember what you were doing 10 seconds ago, and you're tired of being scolded by productivity apps that promise to fix your attention span. So you start to wonder if you have ADHD, and every TikTok or podcast that lists the symptoms makes you nod along. You might even talk to your doctor, who might agree. You get a label, you get a name for the overwhelm. And it feels like relief for a while, it feels like an explanation. But then you start to notice something else, something no one really told you. The modern world is breaking everyone's brain. The modern world is so overstimulating, so fast, so contradictory, that your nervous system cannot keep up. You start to realize that maybe it isn't your brain that's broken, maybe the environment is. Maybe you don't have ADHD, maybe you have culture shock. It might sound odd to use that phrase. Culture shock is what you associate with travel, with moving to a new country, with language barriers and strange foods and customs that feel alien. But what if the world you grew up in has changed so dramatically, so rapidly, that you are experiencing a form of culture shock without ever leaving your city? What if you are living in a culture that feels so unnatural, so disconnected from human design, that your brain and body cannot adapt? Think about what your system was built for. Humans evolved to live in communities of 100 or 200 people, in environments where you could see the sun and touch the dirt, where you moved your body throughout the day, where you connected face-to-face with others and shared stories around a fire at night. Your senses were designed for this. Your mind was designed for this. Now look around. You wake up and the first thing you see is a glowing screen with infinite scroll, infinite bad news, infinite envy-producing highlight reels. Before your feet hit the floor, your brain is already flooded with 1,000 inputs, most of them irrelevant to your survival or your values. You spend the day in a concrete box, maybe seeing a few other faces behind more glowing rectangles, juggling tasks that have no tangible outcome, clicking buttons, sending messages, responding to pings. You drive past thousands of strangers, all of whom you will never see again. You consume more information in a single morning than your ancestors processed in a year. Your brain was never meant to do this. Your attention was never meant to split this many ways. Your nervous system was never meant to exist in a sea of strangers, bombarded by stimulation that never stops. And so your brain starts to panic. It starts to scramble. It starts to do anything it can to keep up. You can't focus? Of course you can't. The environment is not built for focus. You feel restless? Of course you do. Your body was meant to move, to gather, to build, to dance, not to sit in a chair for 10 hours watching a blinking cursor. You feel forgetful? Of course you do. Your brain cannot store 20 conflicting priorities while also worrying about climate change and a war in a country you will never visit. This is culture shock. You are in an environment so mismatched to your design that your entire system is rebelling. The modern world demands that you behave like a robot. But you are an animal. You are a creature of emotion, of rhythm, of presence. The culture treats your humanity like a flaw to be optimized away, instead of a gift to be protected. So of course you feel like you're losing your mind. You were never meant to live like this. When people talk about ADHD, they list symptoms that sound suspiciously familiar to anyone living in a modern city. Trouble sustaining attention on boring tasks? Who wouldn't when their work is meaningless, disconnected from tangible results, measured only in spreadsheets? Distractibility? Who wouldn't, with notifications exploding all day, with apps designed to hijack your dopamine, with 20 headlines telling you the world is ending? Impulsivity? Who wouldn't, when everything is one click away with no friction between desire and consumption? Forgetfulness? Who wouldn't, with no rituals, no community rhythms, no elders to help you hold the memory of what matters? That doesn't mean ADHD isn't real. For some people, it is lifelong and disabling, a difference in wiring that needs support and care. But many people right now are labeling themselves with a disorder when the problem is not inside them, but around them. They are reacting exactly the way any healthy human would react to a culture that is spun completely out of control. Pace alone is enough to fry your circuits. You are expected to be reachable at every moment, to respond instantly, to process 100 choices before breakfast. You are supposed to follow political upheaval around the globe, then answer a coworker's Slack message, then finish a parenting article, then remember to order groceries, then figure out how to invest for retirement, all while somehow being a good partner and a good citizen and a good friend. That is not human. That is a recipe for cognitive collapse. And then there is the loss of embodied life. Your brain was designed to work in cooperation with your body. Movement, physical labor, group rituals, even singing together all help regulate attention. When your body is still, but your brain is spinning, you are living in a mismatch that the nervous system experiences as threat. That chronic sense of threat is what we now call stress, but stress is far too small a word. It is actually a culture-induced trauma, a system that keeps ringing alarm bells, because nothing feels safe or grounded. No wonder you can't focus. No wonder you feel like you're bouncing from thing to thing, forgetting, starting, and stopping. Your mind is trying to process a flood of information and cannot. Your body is trying to calm down in a place that never lets it. You are experiencing culture shock in your own home. There is something profound about naming it that way. When you call it culture shock, you can see the mismatch. You can see that the problem is not a broken brain, but a broken environment. You can see that, of course, you are struggling to adapt because you were not designed for this. That insight alone can bring so much relief because once you name it, you can stop blaming yourself. You can stop calling yourself lazy, scattered, incompetent. You can stop seeing your struggle as a personal failing. You can start asking better questions like, how can I adapt my surroundings to fit me instead of contorting myself to fit them? You can start being gentle with your attention instead of punishing it for not acting like a machine. You might still need tools, planners, timers, therapy, medication, if that's right for you, but you will hold them differently. You will see them not as cures for a defective brain, but as supports for a beautiful, sensitive brain living in a chaotic world. You will understand that you need community, movement, rhythm, purpose, and that no amount of bullet journaling will save you if you keep living in a world that erodes those things. Culture shock explains why the same person who cannot answer emails for a week can spend hours building a garden or learning an instrument or hiking in the woods. It explains why your mind feels scattered in a spreadsheet but focused when you are telling a story around a dinner table. It explains why you can't finish your online course but can spend a whole day cooking for friends. These are not random failures. They are signals that your brain works best in contexts that are human-shaped. And there is grief here too, because once you see the mismatch, you can't unsee it. You start to mourn how far modern life has pulled you away from what feels good and sane. You see how lonely people are, even surrounded by constant communication. You see how disconnected you feel, even as you click like on your friend's photo. You see how meaningless so many of your tasks are, how hollow your achievements feel, how shallow your days have become. That grief is necessary, that grief is honest, because it can motivate you to change. Culture shock is not a failure, it is an alarm. It is your nervous system telling you, this is too much, this is too fast, this is not home. If you were a traveler dropped into a place where you didn't know the language, the food, the rules, you would feel overwhelmed. You would give yourself compassion, time, curiosity. You would look for guides, for community, for translation. What if you gave yourself the same compassion for living in this current world? What if you treated your struggle as normal, as expected, as worthy of tenderness? That perspective doesn't magically solve the overload, but it does change how you relate to it. You can begin to see your sensitivity, your distractibility, your sense of confusion, not as defects, but as intelligent reactions. You can see your desire to escape the office and go sit outside not as procrastination, but as longing. You can see your inability to hyper-focus on spreadsheets as a sign you crave more tangible, embodied work. You can see your symptoms as signals pointing you back to a more human life, signals telling you to slow down, to ground, to reconnect, signals telling you to build a rhythm that honors your cycles of rest and effort, signals telling you that a world designed for profit will never be designed for your wholeness. You cannot completely leave modern culture behind. Rent needs to be paid, groceries bought, children fed. The emails won't vanish, but you can build small islands of sanity inside the noise. You can protect spaces where your nervous system can breathe. You can give yourself rituals, morning sunlight, walking after dinner, meals shared in person. You can trade constant scrolling for a phone call with one friend who really sees you. You can go to bed without your phone. You can remind yourself that you are still an animal, not an algorithm, and your body needs tending. You might also need to grieve what you cannot change. You might need to grieve that work will still expect you to answer emails at 8 p.m., that your job will still measure you in metrics, that society will still reward the hustle. You might need to grieve that you cannot completely build the village you long for. That grief is heavy, but it is clean. It is better than the self-hatred you feel when you think you are failing. In a way, it is an act of profound rebellion to say, I am not defective. I am overwhelmed. It is an act of truth-telling to say, my attention is precious and this culture is squandering it. It is an act of self-compassion to say, I need to live differently, even in small ways, because I cannot force myself to adapt to what is insane. Every time you feel like your brain is breaking, pause and ask, what would this look like if I were dropped in a village with elders and children, with a shared meal, with a campfire, with work I could see and touch? Would my brain still feel broken there? That question will ground you. That question will remind you that you are not wrong. You are just far from home. You don't have ADHD because you are a failure. You might not have it at all. You might simply have a brain that is protesting a world it was never built for. That protest is wise. That protest is healthy. It is the refusal of your body to normalize what is abnormal. It is the refusal of your soul to forget what it was designed for. There is room for diagnosis, for treatment, for real support, of course, but don't let the label blind you to the bigger truth. This culture is sick, and it makes sick brains out of healthy people, simply by denying them what every human needs to thrive. You can reclaim that, one choice at a time. You can learn to listen to your boredom, your restlessness, your sadness, and hear them as a plea for reconnection. You can ask what your ancestors would have done, and bring even a sliver of that back to your modern life. You can remind yourself that you are not alone, that thousands, millions are quietly crumbling under the same weight, and you can talk about it so the shame begins to lift. That is how you find a path forward. Not by forcing yourself to perform perfect focus in an inhuman world, but by remembering you were never meant to function like a machine. You were meant to love, to move, to rest, to wonder, to build, to grieve, to belong. Maybe you do have ADHD. Maybe that wiring is real for you, and honoring it matters. But maybe part of what you call ADHD is simply a refusal to comply with a culture that wants your mind on a leash. Maybe your distraction is a protest. Maybe your daydreaming is a kind of homesickness. Maybe your messiness is a wish to create, not just to produce. Maybe your constant restarting is hope. If you can see your struggle in that way, you can begin to work with it instead of against it. You can begin to build a life where your attention feels respected. You can take breaks without guilt. You can move your body without apology. You can rest. You can play. You can connect. And slowly your brain might remember how to trust itself again. Call it culture shock. Call it a mismatch. Call it heartbreak. But don't call it personal failure. You are wired to belong somewhere, slower, warmer, more human. It's okay to miss that. It's okay to build a version of it, however small, wherever you are. Because you deserve to feel at home in your own mind, you deserve to feel at home in your own body, you deserve to belong, not just in the culture out there, but in the life you're building, one breath at a time.